Alright, so let's get back to the trauma literature for a moment. I've deviated for a while with my bloody monomyth ramblings, so now I need to rediscover some solid analytical bearings for the last 3 episodes.
What are you doing here?
Therefore, this analysis is both an examination of WandaVision episode 6 and a discussion of how trauma affects our communication. They kind of contextualize each other, trust me. So one of the defining attributes of trauma is that it makes remembering so painful that it inhibits the self from being able to communicate the past, for the reason that communication demands us to be able to visualize and contextualize meaning.
He was killed by Ultron, wasn't he?
As Emily Keatley and Michael Pickering said, yes, of course, I'm referencing them, but I'm not using the mnemonic imagination this time. The repression of memory as a self-protective response to trauma then makes forgetting rather than remembering decisive for the human subject. Trauma was characterized in episode 1 through 3 as living in imagination with limitations. Westview was a world that created an illusion of community. Every joke was about Wanda and Vision anticipating rejection, but then surprise that they're accepted.
I would like to award you with the inaugural Comedy Performance of the Year.
However, there wasn't any real substance to the relationships within it because it culminated with someone being thrown out when they're asking questions.
I'm just your neighbor.
Then how did you know about Ultron?
Then episode 4 introduced a whole other world with S.W.O.R.D, and more importantly Monica, who's someone that's experienced a similar feeling of loss, but had time to process it. Therefore she became a guiding light within this mystery. Subsequently, episode 5 and now 6 is about these two worlds coming into contact and deciphering each other. Vision and Monica kind of shares the same goal as peaceful and curious negotiators, while Wanda and Hayward are like generals that have marked their territory and are ready to throw down. However, just by dealing with the exercise of communication, Wanda and the theme of trauma has developed into a new stage. She is now beginning to be forced to remember the past. Or seemingly so anyways. Episode 6 is deeply inspired by Malcolm in the Middle. Elizabeth Olsen has discussed that one of the reasons behind using this style is its cynical portrayal of the traditional American nuclear family, because the humor often comes from how dysfunctional the household is. The opening displays this with Vision playing the role of the grumpy dad as opposed to the good-natured and naive husband, while Wanda is kind of powerless to her kid's intrusion. This represents an end to the innocence of this world. When we're introduced to Vision in his costume, he's not excited like usual, but feels like he's coerced.
Thank you for humoring me and wearing this ridiculous getup, honey.
Well, there were no other clothes in my closet, so...
They have an argument in front of the kids, and Vision deliberately avoids spending Halloween with them.
Well, I am telling you now.
Mom and Dad have been not fighting, just like different.
However, one of the big changes that comes from this genre is that Tommy and Billy now have their own point of views, whereas previously they were treated kind of like plot devices that artificially kept Wanda and Vision distracted and together.
Oh, boys. Come here.
Which on one hand is really cool, because in the comics, after they're resurrected, they become fully realized and established characters. And on the other hand, the show also simply begins to be a lot more sympathetic for Wanda. Her connection with this fantasy world feels a lot more valid now. Her kids don't feel superficial anymore.
Whoa, Mom! Are you old Red Riding Hood?
Subsequently, this episode is organized into 3 storylines. We have what I like to call Hayward v Monica, dawn of bureaucratic incompetence. He thinks killing Wanda would save everyone. Monica advocates for a more peaceful resolution, and Hayward justifies his actions not by rational motives, but through prejudice against superheroes.
Constantly advocating on behalf of superpowered individuals. Yes, I know your history with Carol Danvers.
As a result, shockingly enough, he's also a character defined by his own trauma, for the reason that his anger comes from unresolved grief, clearly.
All you people who left still have the luxury of optimism. You have no idea what it was like.
Therefore, when Monica proposes resolving Wanda's, he clearly feels personally attacked and contradicted. And he also is clearly hiding something too.
Get her off my base. Now.
Wu, Darcy, and Monica are also kicked out of the base for no real reason, and when they escape, Monica even acknowledges that he's had it out for them for ages. In episode 4, he looked rather irritated when Wu kept asking questions about the tunnels.
Someone must really miss you back at Quantico.
And Darcy establishing visual contact and having a really good theory behind Wanda also made him look kind of pissed off, so now we know why.
Hayward figured out a way to look through the boundary.
And you didn't share it with the group.
The team then discovers Hayward had been able to look through the boundary and track Vision this whole time, so he was clearly getting frustrated from how quickly they were catching up to him.
My equipment registered an extremely high level of CMBR. That's
Relic radiation dating back to the Big Bang.
My hypothesis is that Hayward was so deeply traumatized by the snap that he deliberately broke the Sokovian Accords to use Vision to make weapons against Thanos, hence why SWORD went from being a space organization to an AI-driven one.
Shifted away from manned missions and refocused on robotics, nanotech, AI.
And why he argued that Wanda couldn't blame him. He saw himself as doing the heroic right thing, and why he watches coldly when Vision is dying at the end.
He really does want out, doesn't he?
He's like a scientist studying bacteria. Therefore, I think this grudge could have extended over to him initially capturing Wanda, because we didn't actually see her escape from SWORD from the original footage, and he could have unlocked her X gene on top of her mind powers, causing the entire situation.
You've gone through the boundary twice already, Monica. The energy inside has rewritten your cells on a molecular level twice.
The show even goes as far to elaborate that Monica's DNA was also rewritten, so the human body isn't safe from whatever's going on. Regardless, Monica is committed to help Wanda because she strongly believes that she can help her resolve her grief. Darcy also stays behind to break into Hayward's last important file, which could reveal that he's behind everything, or that he has a very big hentai collection. Second storyline is Wanda hanging out with Pietro on Halloween. Their interactions are all centered around him seemingly knowing more than she does. When Wanda dresses up as a Sokovian fortune teller, he references a memory she doesn't have.
That's not exactly how I remember it.
Then he even outright says,
He probably suppressed a lot of the trauma.
Then when they go trick-or-treating, she's genuinely confused over why he looks so different, and he's also openly using his superpowers to mess with people.
You're testing me.
No, I'm not.
Hey, it's cool.
Wanda is also actively confused by Pietro's lack of accent, and he not only points hers out, but reveals that he was sent here to aid her.
Shot like a chump in the street for no reason at all, and next thing I know, I heard you calling me.
So yeah, Pietro is not a joke recast. He is in fact plucked from another universe. Pietro even knows he's in a fantasy world, and he doesn't judge Wanda for
You
it.
don't think it's wrong?
Are you kidding? I'm impressed.
Wanda also, once again, explains that she doesn't remember how this happened, which means, she's also wasn't lying to Vision last episode. Speaking of Vision, his storyline features him spending his time exploring the far reaches of Westview. He cheers up at the sight of children because, as he said in Age of Ultron,
I am on the side of life.
and he also got really mad last episode about the lack of children, but he's also really confused by a frozen neighborhood where Agnes sits at the very edge in the car, almost about to leave.
You're one of the Avengers. You're Vision.
Vision not only doesn't remember being an Avenger, he also doesn't know that he's dead. Agnes also laughs in a rather sinister way, which indicates the Mind Stone may be affecting her in kind of a different way than it did with Norm. Vision then painfully leaves the bubble and begins to die while everyone coldly watches. Darcy attempts to help, but is arrested. Billy senses this and then alerts Wanda. She then expands the bubble, saving Vision, and in one move absorbs the entire SWORD base, with only Hayward, Wu, and Monica barely escaping. Alright, so my monomyth map is completely failing me, guys, because we've got 3 episodes left and we still don't know who's accountable, what's the mystery, and what's the big lesson Wanda's learned. I approximated episode 6 as the end of Act 2, which is where conventionally these things are answered. Campbell called it the ultimate boon, which is when the hero achieves the goal of their journey, like when Batman became Batman in Batman Begins and defeats Falcone as Batman. And then the third act tested his commitment as Batman by burning his house down and having him fight his own mentor as Batman. Right now, we still don't know what Wanda wants, or what anyone wants, in fact. However, we can still estimate what stage this episode kind of captures, because we have Pietro.
What happened to your accent?
What happened to yours?
Pietro represents the atonement with the Father, which is when the hero confronts whatever is holding power over their lives. paraphrase from page 126, because Pietro functions as a mirror that forces Wanda to be conscious of all the inconsistent details that she's been ignorant to.
I'm just trying to do my part. Okay, come to town unexpectedly, create tension with the brother-in-law, stir up trouble with the Rugrats, and ultimately give you grief. That's what you wanted, isn't it?
Whereas previously, she was so concerned with coddling Vision that being curious was not only unappealing, but felt psychologically threatening. As a result, similar to the last episode, the margins of empathy have moved. Wanda no longer feels like a villain, but a casualty of someone else's games. There's a moment where Wanda sees dead Pietro for a second, like with Vision. However, if this is Pietro from another world, then this isn't his corpse being reanimated by Wanda, and she just sort of forgot to disguise it for a second. Now it infers that her mind is warning her of something. And also, the ending represents a contradiction. Just when Wanda finds the world less convincing, she expands it. Surely this will exacerbate her growing suspicion because everything is even more hidden now. As a result, I think Wanda and Hayward will continue to escalate their conflict and thus feed into their feelings of constant discontent, while Monica and Vision will act as peacemakers who draw their attentions towards the truth until they're ready to forgive each other.
If Wanda is the problem, she has to be our solution.
In conclusion, that's all I got. I guess special thanks to everyone on Patreon again, and Discord stuff will be set up soon.
Don't sweat it, sis. It's not like your dead husband could die twice.
I hate my lisp.